Today, I am in the middle of nowhere in an Egyptian desert. We're taking a private taxi from Aswan to see the most legendary temples of Egypt, the Abu Simbel Temples. Usually, people wake up at 4 in the morning in Aswan and start at 4:30 to catch the sunrise at Abu Simbel Temples, which means waking up at an hour that should honestly feel illegal. But I'm doing something different. I wanted to beat the crowds and to see the temples, to have it all to myself, which is why I started around noon and catch the sunset there. Let's see how that turns out. That turned out to be one of the best decisions I made in Egypt, because what waited at the end of that road wasn't just another ancient temple. It was a monument so extraordinary that when a rising lake, which is Lake Nasser, threatened to swallow it forever, the world came together and moved an entire mountain to save it. An entire mountain.
Wait, what?
Today, we are heading to the very edge of Egypt in the borders of Sudan to find out why. Super excited. The sun is brutal. It's very hot outside. We are stuffed in a petrol pump. The landscape across Sahara, basically you just drive in the middle of Sahara. The landscape changes in a way like you see some black dunes and then you see yellow dunes of the Sahara. By the time I reached Abu Simbel, I'd already been to the best preserved ancient temple in Egypt, the Edfu Temple, and also the temple with 300 crocodile mummies, Kom Temple. I thought I understood the scale of what ancient Egypt actually built. Abu Simbel corrected that assumption within about 30 seconds of arriving. Wow, absolutely mind-blowing. Nothing prepares you for the scale. Ramesses II was not a man known for his modesty. In fact, historians estimate he built more statues, temples, and monuments to himself than any other pharaoh in Egyptian history. The man didn't have an ego. He had a construction program.
That is true.
But standing in front of this four-seated colossi, carved directly out of a cliff face over 3,000 years ago, the jokes stop. It just stops you. What a beautiful temple! Gigantic four statues of Ramesses II, 20-meter tall each. Can you believe that? And one of the statues has been a bit broken, probably because of an earthquake. Ramesses was so personal with his statues that even the big statues had his family members engraved onto the stones. His wife, children. Wow.
Oh my God.
So personal. Amazing.
5 minutes later.
Inside, the first thing you see is 8 more statues of Ramesses II, 4 on each side, holding up the ceiling. Just in case you forgot whose temple this was. So 8 big statues and they are all gods. So this is Osiris. What is amazing here is Osiris here is depicted as Ramesses II. So what does that mean? This means that Ramesses wanted people to perceive him as a god. And Osiris is the god of afterlife. This is the key of life.
What did you say?
Give you a scale like look. And I want my gears today. Wow, these are really, really big.
You can see Ramesses everywhere here. Wow. Entry was a bit more, it's 820 Egyptian pounds.
But I think it's truly worth it. Like such massive structures here.
Ramesses II was supposed to live for more than 100 years and he had 200 wives. Can you imagine that? So he's thought to have outlived even a lot of his children. And The statues outside, the 4 statues are all of Ramesses. What he wanted to do with this is he wanted to play with the psychology of Nubians who were coming from Sudan. So Nubia today is mostly Sudan. We're coming from Sudan to Egypt. So it's clear that when you see a structure like this shining in the harsh sun of Sahara Desert, and the Nubians come from Sudan and they see something like this, wow, of course, this is depicting how powerful, how huge the Egyptian kingdom back then was during Ramesses II, and definitely playing with your psychology. So this temple is not dedicated to any god. This temple was built just to show the power of Ramesses II back then as the greatest pharaoh of Egypt. Every single wall is covered in reliefs, battles, victories, the pharaoh slaying enemies, all carefully executed, all telling one story, how great Ramesses was. 3,000 years before social media, and this man already understood personal branding better than most people today.
Yes!
3,000 years ago, Egypt wasn't ruling the world uncontested. The Hittites controlled much of modern-day Turkey and Syria, while Nubia to the south was famous for its gold and wealth. Everyone wanted power, territory, and control of the trade routes. The north wall of this hall is entirely dedicated to the Battle of Kadesh. Ramesses charging in his chariot, the Hittite commander running away, Egypt triumphant. Incredible detail, incredibly dramatic. So we see a lot of inscriptions inside this temple from the Battle of Kadesh, but where it gets interesting is Kadesh historians believe was supposed to be a draw, not a victory as Ramesses wanted to portray it. So yeah, he was exaggerating a lot of times.
What?
He just wanted everyone to know him as the greatest pharaoh of Egypt, but also as the greatest king of the world. Not just a king, but more than that, like a god.
Just told you who I thought I was. A god. I just told you.
Ramesses couldn't take the city, couldn't hold the territory, but did that stop him carving it as the greatest triumph in Egyptian history across every wall he owned? Absolutely not. The audacity is genuinely unmatched. This innermost room, the Holy of Holies, has 4 gods seated side by side. Ra-Horakhti, Amun, Ta, and Ramesses II himself, deified, sitting among gods while he was still alive. He put himself in here, among gods, as a god. I have no words for that level of confidence.
Oh my God.
And what is so special and crazy about this is during the solar alignments, which happens twice a year on 22nd of October and 22nd of February, 2 times the sun rays hit the sanctuary are supposed to be 2 important dates. One, the birthday of Ramesses, the other, the coronation. One of the gods never saw the daylight, and that is supposed to be the god of creation. And indeed, if you look on my back, from here inside the sanctuary, you only see 3 statues. You don't see 4 gods. Why? I mentioned before, the statue on the extreme right is of god Ta. Can you believe the kind of engineering, the precision, and the cosmic alignment the Egyptians used 3,000 years back? And still, when they moved the temple to avoid it from getting flooded, the new engineers of today's world couldn't recreate the solar alignment. It shifted, the famous solar alignment shifted by one full day. Yes, you heard that correct.
Wait, what?
Did you know that this temple of Abu Simbel was forgotten over time? Yes, it was buried completely under sand in the deserts of Sahara in Egypt. And in 1813, Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, he found this. And one more interesting fact is there was a young boy who helped in digging the sand out of the entrance to the temple, and his name was Abu Simbel. That is why today this temple in modern era is known as the famous legendary Abu Simbel Temple.
Whoa!
Since the temple is almost going to close in 15 minutes, they close at 5 in the evening, and there is the next temple, which is the secondary temple for Queen Nefertari. Let's go explore that, and that is so cool as well because there the statue of Nefertari is as big and tall like the one from Ramesses. Yes, and that is very unique because back then men and women in ancient Egypt were not equal. So the kings would always have big statues and the queens always had the smaller ones.
Oh, hell no!
But Nefertari was special. She was the most favorite wife of Ramesses. So he dedicated a temple to Nefertari in the Abu Simbel Temple complex. So let's go check that out. Wow. I have to be quick. It's just because I can stay outside, but I cannot stay inside the temples after 5 o'clock. Wow. And you see how huge the structures really are on my back.
A few moments later.
Your boyfriend forgot your anniversary? Rookie mistake. Ramesses II built his wife an entire temple, carved her face 60 feet high, made her the same size as himself on the facade, which in ancient Egypt meant she was basically a god. This is the only temple in Egyptian history where a queen appears equal in size to the pharaoh.
Damn.
Equal in stone forever. For context, this is the same man who put 4 statues of himself on his own front door. So, for Nefertari to get her own temple, her own face, her own spotlight, that's huge. Did he also have 199 other wives? Yes, but we are not talking about that right now. The bar was somewhere at the bottom of the Nile, but Ramesses cleared it. Nefertari, if you're watching from the afterlife, you won. Queen Nefertari, so we see her on my back there. What is something which I noticed immediately here is in the Ramesses Temple, the colors on the rock inscriptions, the hieroglyphs, they didn't have much color, but in the Temple of Nefertari, the blue and the yellows are very intact. And it's so pretty. Like, imagine if the real colors were there in both the temples. Like, wow, how cool would that be to look at? And to think that they built these temples 3,000 years ago into rock cliffs. In the 1960s, the Aswan Dam, when it was constructed, it was feared that this temple of Abu Simbel, the complex, would flood. That is why they broke the rocks into 1,000 pieces, sometimes each weighing until 30 tons. That would be like 5 elephants together. And they rebuilt all the 1,000 pieces to this entire complex, exactly like how Ramesses had built it back then. And what is crazier to think about is they just didn't rebuild the temple. UNESCO rebuilt also an artificial mountain to make it look exactly the same as it was back then. This rescue effort are the biggest rescue missions ever done by UNESCO so far. Like, I'm like mind blown, like wow. And then to see all of this just to myself without any crowds, without anybody around, like they feel the I don't know, the power in the temples, like wow. Beautiful. At first glance, this is Nefertari's temple, built for her, named for her, dedicated to her. Sweet, but look closer. Ramesses is here too. 4 statues of him, 2 of her, on her temple.
Damn!
This man was invited as a +1 and showed up with more luggage than the bride. However, and this is important, he made her nearly the same size as himself on the walls. In ancient Egypt, that was almost unheard of for a queen. So yes, he crashed her entrance, he hogged it, but gave her the whole interior. Sounds like every couple I've ever met. I'm really lucky that I chose to come here on sunset. I know with the mountain how the direction is, it faces towards Lake Nasser. The sunrise is when you should come because then the sun comes directly onto the Ramesses II statues. And you can see the sun hitting the sanctuary back there as well. But then there are going to be so many people. It's like overloaded. This is not a very big temple inside. So then too many people, you see only heads. Instead, I chose to come here during sunset, meaning I have the entire temple complex all to myself. Wow, and for me, that matters the most, showing you guys how the temple really is without the crowds, without anyone else. So yes, I'm extremely lucky to experience all of this, and this is such a divine feeling.
Yes, definitely.
One eternity later.
The last ones to leave the temple complex. On my left, on your right, on the camera would be the Lake Nasser, absolutely beautiful setting. And this mountain behind me is an artificial mountain. So when the UNESCO did the rescue mission, what they did, 2 things. They moved the Abu Simbel Temples 200 meters away from where they were and 67 meters higher on the ground. The temple complex is pretty huge. The site is huge. This is the Abu Simbel shopping complex just outside the exit gates. And you have such beautiful views of Lake Nasser. You hear the chirping of the sparrows everywhere. The wind today is very, very windy. Yesterday was also like around 28 kilometers per hour. Today is 32 kilometers per hour. Like, wow, the dust is making me go crazy. So let's go and check out the views. You see white pigeons? I'm going to show you. Wait. White pigeons. You're on the back side of the temple now, and these are like the shopping complex. We could shop here. I'd never do that. It's all tourist traps at an exorbitant pricing everywhere. If you want to have a coffee or a tea, I think this is where you can put that. And Abu Simbel Temple complex also has a famous light show every evening. It's like $30. This is the visitor center. Here you can read a lot about the history of the temples and restoration works that went on throughout the history of Egypt from early 1900s. So around 1960, a lot of restoration was going through because of the construction of the Aswan High Dam. Even before that, what went on in today's Sudan. Watch it, especially if you want to know about Nubia, the artifacts in the museums of Khartoum and Cairo, one of the biggest archaeological rescue missions in the world. In so many different countries, like 50 different nations pitched in with their money. So an archaeologist from the entire world helped. This is it. Let me now go back to the taxi, and it takes 3.5 hours to go back to Aswan. I did change my clothes because I want to be relaxed in the long taxi ride back. You can hear the azan in the background from the Abu Simbel village nearby. And there's going to be a light show here, so I mentioned this before, but for that you need to be in a hotel in Abu Simbel. There's literally nothing to do here except the temple. Let's get in the taxi. They relocated an entire mountain. Meanwhile, I can't even relocate my keys. So tell me, what's the most mind-blowing thing you've discovered while traveling? Drop it in the comments. And if you want more travel stories like this, subscribe. I'll see you in the next vlog from Egypt. 1 month, no tours, no guides, no itinerary. Cairo and the pyramids, not just Giza, but Dashur, Saqqara, the ones very few visits. Fayum and Wadi al-Hitan, whale skeletons, 40 million years old, sitting in the open Sahara. Then south along the Nile, Luxor, Edfu, Aswan, all the way to Abu Simbel, where Egypt meets Sudan. The western desert, 5 oases, Siwa on the Libyan border, places so remote the silence feels loud. And finally, Hurghada, the Red Sea, the end of the road. Egypt is not a country you visit, it's a country that happens to you. Border to border, 1 month of public transport, shared vans, private taxis, and the kindness of strangers. This was my Egypt, and it's only just getting started on this channel. So subscribe and follow along. Let's uncover Egypt together.